I made 1 billion rubles in turnover.
How did you get into wushu and qigong in the first place?
Is the point where all the energy flows of a person that disconverge.
I noticed that butterflies started flying over to me and landing on me.
There is a civilization called Draco. It's called Draco. The lingam rises, she's sitting on you, right? And you intentionally start circulating the energy. There simply aren't any other options.
I welcome you to this podcast. My name is Trish, and today we've gathered here, sitting on this couch like Coach Yogis with Ruslan Berlin, a person I've known since 2017. He's a multifaceted person. He is involved in spiritual topics, just like I am. In some ways, we're similar. He's also involved in crypto, in the investment sphere, and works in educating people. So today, for me personally, this will be a very interesting conversation. Ruslan, welcome. You sent me some information about yourself. You really do have a lot of achievements and interesting things going on. But I'd like to start from the very beginning of your life journey to understand how you got to where you are now and how you were shaped as a person. Tell us about yourself. Where were you born? What kind of family did you grow up in? What was your education like? Because all of that really shapes a person. It starts to form who you are, right?
I was born in the Krasnodar region, in a city called Armavir. I come from a family of actors. Everyone in my family, you could say, is an actor except for me. My grandmother is a distinguished actress of the USSR, Svetlana Kashitskaya. My father graduated from the Rostov Theater Institute with honors. My mother graduated from GITIS, and today my father is 69 years old. He still performs here in Moscow in the theater, dancing the can-can on stage. It's interesting, it's inspiring. You know, some people who are already 70 spend all their time registering at hospitals and clinics. That's their whole social scene. So after that, my parents moved to the Urals, to the Republic of Bashkortostan, and that's where I finished school. At the age of 17, my father sent me to Moscow. That was in 2001. And besides that, I also have an older brother, a younger brother, and a younger sister. My father sent me to Moscow, sent me money for maybe 2 or 3 months, and that was it. Then there were some difficulties. It was the early 2000s. The company where my father worked went bankrupt. My mother started selling clothes at the market. Well, something like that. So I don't have a story of wealthy parents, and everything I've achieved in this life is, as they call it today, with the trendy word, self-made. From then on, I realized there was no way back. I enrolled in university and then dropped out. It was the Moscow Pedagogical University, and I lived in a dormitory on Kosmonaftov Street. That's near the VDNKH metro station. Right behind the Cosmos Hotel, there's a dormitory for the Pedagogical University. I started working. I worked as a loader. Then I found courses for waiters and bartenders, completed them, got a first-class bartender qualification, and went to work in the restaurant business. I worked in the restaurant business for about 4 or 5 years. I have a lot of experience there as a waiter, bartender, manager, and in many other roles. That's all there is to it. And that was the path I took in Moscow, meeting people, making new acquaintances, socializing, and so on. After working in the restaurant business, one of my friends invited me to work in the construction materials trade. I've always had a rather inquisitive mind, and whenever I start working somewhere, I don't just focus on my own area of responsibility. I'm also interested in what other departments, divisions, and structures are doing, and so on. So I guess that's how it is for most mentors who are striving for something. But I had already built up a client base, studied how accounting works, how to register a legal entity, and so on. I learned all of that and realized mathematically, why should I settle for earning 5% when I could be taking the entire 100% of the profit for myself? And in 2007, I registered my first legal entity, an LLC, for trading construction materials. And in general, for construction, since all the clients were tied to me personally and not to the company, I naturally transferred them to the new legal entity and rented an office near Textishiki metro station on Lyublinskaya Street. I assembled a team of sales managers, hired 2 accountants, and that was it. And I launched my own company, started hiring workers, that is taking on subcontracting jobs and trading construction materials. That's it, just like that. I became an owner at 22. I became a business owner. I basically left employment completely. It was 2007. Yes, it was the beginning of the year. And in that very year, I achieved a turnover of 1 billion rubles. So that's quite a large turnover, even if my margin was 5 to 7%. But even with that delta, it was already serious.
5 to 7% is net profit.
Net profit, yes.
And what did you do with that money? I'm curious.
Yeah, I'm curious too. Looking back, how could I have done that with it? Since I'm 23 years old, right?
Yes.
I was just on the path of working on myself, on my personal qualities. And then you could say you spend the money, right? That is, I bought a Mercedes ML 5N5 with a Brabus body kit on 22nd chrome wheels. But then I moved my parents to Moscow and my younger brother and sister. I paid for their education in full, unlike myself at the time. At that point, I had already dropped out of my 3rd university because I simply didn't have time to study. In the 3rd university, I completed 3 years. And for me, education comes quite easily. And I always did very well in school too. The only reason my parents were called in was because of my behavior. And here I finished 6 semesters with top marks, but I had to leave. I paid for their education. And both my brother and sister graduated from university, but I eventually graduated too. Now I have 3 higher education degrees. They are psychology, interpersonal psychology, pedagogy, and as of today, an economics degree. But that was only after I had the means, when I had the financial ability to devote time to it. What happened next? Next came the year 2008. Crisis hit the construction industry, and by the end of the year, we shut down for good. I let all the guys go. 90% of our clients stopped their operations, and I ended up with a cash gap of 22 million rubles at that time. Besides that, what made that year significant for me was that I was actively practicing wushu and qigong at the time.
Let me ask a quick clarifying question here. How did you get into wushu and qigong in the first place? I take it you had already started developing an interest in spiritual practices by then, right?
Yes, that's right.
Why did you become interested? How did you end up there?
I think you understand, as someone involved in spirituality, esotericism, and personal development, that there are certain stages of formation that every person has to go through in one way or another, and does go through. And the way of thinking of Taoists or yogis is different from that of ordinary people, who tend to think only within the framework of a single lifetime. Here, we think in terms of the soul's progress through changing bodies in a certain way. And that's why everyone has certain experiences from past lives that they bring with them here to a particular family. Some are born in Yakutia, some in Africa, some in Moscow in an intellectual family, and some, for example, in a family of alcoholics. All of this is determined by a person's individual destiny, their path, which must be the Tao. What is the Tao? It is a path, and for each person, it is very individual and very unique. That's why people who criticize, judge, or even just discuss others, I recommend not doing this often, because you don't know that person, you don't know their path. The president of the country follows his own path, some bandit follows his own path, and someone else follows their own path as well. Everyone has their own path, it is unique, and they must go through it. By judging someone else, what are we doing in this way? What kind of information are we broadcasting out? The information of misunderstanding, meaning I do not understand this person's path. And that means that automatically time, place, and circumstances are gathered for us, through which we will be forced to go, finding ourselves in a similar situation in order to feel what that person felt, right? Well, that's more or less how the mechanics work. That's why I had certain experiences since childhood. My mom used to tell me when I was 3 or 4 years old, For example, if my father was sick or there was some other situation, I would come up and move my hands like this, yes, over the person. I mean, you don't realize it. I'd never seen this anywhere. I wasn't copying it from anyone. Or remembering myself when I was a bit older, I recall sitting and twisting my fingers like this, trying to remember now. I understand that there's a science of mudras, specific mudras, a way to direct a person's energy flows. And so at 6 or 7 years old, I was trying to recall these mudras, yes, to form them with my hands. I could already see energy from that time. That is, I would move my hand like this and see a trail of energy following it. By the time I was 14, my father had a black belt in Shotokan Karate, that style. He sent me to his acquaintance who practiced kickboxing. At that time, he was the European kickboxing champion. I trained a little, but I didn't like it. That's it. And I met another coach there. This was in Bashkiria. There's a system called Unibos, a universal martial art, Unibos. I started practicing this art and moved to Moscow. And when I moved to Moscow, I got in touch with the coach. The coach said, listen, go check out a school in Kitai-Gorod. It's called Black Tiger. Boris Boyko, that was the name of the coach we had. Go there. He's a good coach. So I went to see him. This was in 2003, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And I started training at that school. And I brought my brother along. He started training with me too. That's it. Boris Boyko had a master who later became my master as well, Shenji, the Prince of Tai Chi. Well, that's what they call him in China, the Prince of Tai Chi. He demonstrated all sorts of wonders, if I can put it that way.
Tell us about it.
Well, there's this qigong called Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma, for example. Bodhidharma is the first yogi who brought levitation from India to Tibet.
By the way, there's a movie about him. You should watch it.
Yes, it's a good movie. There's Bodhidharma qigong, which has 4 levels. I only studied 3 levels, the 4th. It's a difficult discipline, quite challenging because it's aimed at restructuring ligaments, muscle fibers, tendons, and focuses on working with energy centers. There are 3 energy centers. Many people know about them. They're called Dentian in Chinese. In Japanese, they're called Tanden. Yes, it's the same thing. There is the lower Dantian located here. There is the middle Dantian and there is the upper Dantian. So there is also the chakra system. Chakras are already a subtle energy concept. They are not connected to the Dantian in any way. Dantian is more related to the physical body. The lower Dantian is the center that unites all of a person's physical strength. The Japanese have a procedure called harakiri. This is a masterful strike with a blade delivered 2 millimeters above the hara point. This is the point where all the energy flows of a person converge. In Sanskrit, they are called nadis. Nadi means energy channel. The rough physical projection of the nadis are the blood vessels in the body. All energy flows converge at a single point in every person. It's located here, 2 fingers below the navel. This is the center of all physical strength in a person. You've probably seen a lot of videos online where qigong or Tai Chi masters accumulate energy in the lower dantian, and then people run at them 3 or 4 at a time and still can't move them from their spot. Yes, it's as if their feet are rooted into the ground.
And they can't lift him either.
Yes, they can't even lift him. Master Shen demonstrated this. Shi was a master of energy control. He would perform several iterations, so-called procedures, direct the energy downward, and that's it. He even demonstrated this on a scale in Kitai-Gorod when he came here to Moscow. He steps on, and the scale shows, say, 70 kilograms. Then, through a certain meditation, he directs the energy into the lower dantian, and the scale shows over 200 kilograms.
In actual fact, it could potentially be even more than that, but that's the absolute maximum the scale can accurately display.
Yes, that's the maximum for the scale. Then he performs certain procedures again, directs the energy upward, steps on the scale, and it doesn't register anything. This you can also find old recordings of this on the internet from the Iran television channel. Boris Boyko appeared there. He demonstrated this as well with the scales and with balloons. The master demonstrated it too. You direct the energy upward to the upper dantian, and there are two balloons with a thin piece of glass between them. So at first, if you step on one balloon, obviously the balloon pops. Then you direct the energy upward. He steps on one balloon, then on the second, and stands there calmly. Or in China, when I was with the master, I saw him running on water. Really, I mean, water has a fairly light surface tension. To walk on it, you need a very high level. But running is quite possible. Running on water is entirely possible. So all those stories, the movies, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where they run and jump on treetops, that's all real. It's absolutely real. And what's more, all of this can be learned. When we were traveling through Huangshan, the mountains, with Master Shen, we couldn't keep up with him, even though at that time it was 2008. Yes. I was 23 years old and I couldn't keep up. He was 45. I just couldn't keep up with him. So once a year, he would visit his master in a cave. At that time, his master was 123 years old. He lived in his cave, and when they would walk together, he couldn't keep up with his master moving through the mountains, across the mountain ranges. And his master's teacher was his grandfather, and it was his grandfather who taught him, and he also taught him the process of moving through space, right?
Like teleportation, right?
Yes, yes. And so he says that by the sixth lesson, he was already able to move 5 or 6 meters. His grandfather could move 2,000 kilometers through space. So seeing all this, seeing when the master would pick a blade of grass, we were already in the city of Sanya on Hainan Island. The southernmost point would pick a blade of grass and we would stand like this, and then 3 times like this. He would touch us with the blade of grass and you would fall. You just think, what is happening to me, right? This is called Neigong. There's qigong, which is energy control, and Nei means internal energy. So controlling internal energy, that's a master level skill. So understanding all this, seeing all this, if you haven't seen it, you probably wouldn't believe it. But since I've seen all this, since I've felt it myself, since I've practiced and still practice it, I know for sure that these are techniques. These are techniques, and it's a skill you develop. It's a certain practice. And anyone can develop this practice. The only thing is, in today's reality with technological development, airplanes and so on, it's all not really encouraged. For people, yes. For those in power, so to speak. It's not beneficial for people to develop as a whole because you simply can't control a highly developed, intellectually advanced person. This somewhat goes against the plans of the majority of governments, but that's not what we're talking about now. Again, everyone has their own path, and those who seek will find. Those who are open to miracles will find miracles happening to them everywhere. Those who don't believe in it, of course, won't experience it. In 2008, there was a competition in Hong Kong, the 8th International Wushu competition. I went there with my master as part of a delegation. At that time, I was representing Russia in various disciplines. I won silver and gold, 2 medals among 45 participating countries. And when I returned to Moscow, that year seemed to be a year of achievements, at least in terms of sports, you could say, or rather in terms of my own personal fulfillment. But it was also a year of endings in business, in my professional activities with cash flow gaps and so on. So 2008 was a very memorable year. After that, I came to realize that I needed to change my approach to work, that relying on just one type of activity is inefficient, right? You shouldn't be working for money. Money should be working for you. You need to build passive sources of income. For some reason, let's call them karmic reasons in life, has always brought me into contact with older accomplished people, those who were senior to me both in age and in status. And somehow they would take me under their wing, teaching me in the field of construction, and in other areas I would also encounter mentors. My master, my second master, is named Li Hung Tai. This is the Hongza school, a martial art similar to Wing Chun. If you've seen Wing Chun, do you know what it is? Everyone probably knows the movie IP Man.
Yes.
Well, the Hongza school is very similar to the Wing Chun school. Master Li is very well known in China. Vietnam, and America. He currently lives in Philadelphia. That's right. And even when I started training with him, there were 130 of us. And he would take me aside and constantly tell me, study diligently, I will teach you everything. Out of those 130 people, and even his master, Senpai, as the Japanese call it, there is sensei and there is senpai, the first student. Even his first student would come up to me and ask, why does he come to you? He didn't understand. At that time, I didn't understand it either. But obviously, they could see things more clearly from the outside. That's how it was. Yeah. So the universe, or lest, call it that, or life, whatever you want guides us, gives us hints, shows us where we should go and where we shouldn't. In this way, I was always being guided through teachers that I needed to move in this direction, to develop myself, to go through my growth, specifically on a non-material level. Because material existence is something we can't take with us. From here, we won't take anything. Not money, not phones, nothing. But the level of development of our consciousnness, the amount of neural connections we built up, if you want to put it that way, in more everyday terms, that's exactly what we will take with us from here. Yes. And any action, whether it's learning new languages, studying sacred scriptures, or learning about business processes, all of this expands and scales our consciousness. It scales it, yes. That is, we move on to different categories, different meanings, different desires, including a new outlook on life, and so on. We meet new people. So I believe, and I am deeply convinced, that a person must constantly strive, that our whole life is a lesson. We came here to learn, and those who have stopped developing are taken from here. Whether they're 29 or 58, it doesn't matter. If a person has stopped developing, and look at how it works. It is said that we develop the most in three worlds, that's the saying, in three situations, up to the age of 7, through various trainings, by communicating with elders, and so on. And when life hits you with the first wall, if you miss the first and stubbornly ignore the second, then you should prepare yourself for the third. So if a person doesn't develop, doesn't move forward, doesn't try to find their own path, to feel it, or to turn to some kind of knowledge, there are disciplines, prognostic disciplines, in which you can see a person's path and give them some recommendations. I study them very deeply for a very long time. If a person ignores this, then of course, how can you guide them onto this path? How can you lead them? Life has only one way, to put a person in a situation that is uncomfortable for them. That's all there is to it. So in any case, we will constantly be pushed out of our comfort zone. All illnesses, all difficulties, all hardships in life, what are they? They are the result of a person not understanding how to be effective here. Let's take money, finances, for example. A person who doesn't have money simply doesn't know how to be effective in this area. Family life, relationships. She is constantly getting divorced, or he has 3 wives, 4. This person simply ignores information about the psychology of the opposite sex, learning about the culture of building family relationships, right? And he just does things the way he knows how. And if we don't study pedagogy, for example, then how are you going to raise your children? Only according to the single program that's been recorded in your head. That's how you were raised. If my father beat me, then accordingly, I will go on to beat my own children. Well, crudely speaking. So if there are any difficulties in your relationship with your parents, of course, you need to study pedagogy, so you don't pass those difficulties on. This is called samskaras in Sanskrit. Samskaras, meaning a program.
Imprints.
Yes, imprints that exist in your consciousness, through which you project yourself outward. If you're not satisfied with where you are in one area of life or another, then the only correct understanding is that the logic you follow here is flow. And if your outlook on life, your philosophy, your thoughts haven't brought you to where you want to be, it's logical to conclude that they're incorrect. It makes sense that maybe it's time to start questioning the truth of some of your own beliefs. But we constantly question the information that comes to us. The word events comes from the word to gather, to collect. Time, place, and circumstances are gathered for us, so that by going through them, we gain certain experiences in what are called sensory, emotional frameworks, right? Because information without emotions is barely remembered. Let's remember university, right? the professor who just mumbles something, mumble. We sit there dozing off during his lectures, and naturally we don't remember anything. But if it's interesting, if there are jokes and funny stories and so on, right? Today, it's already a necessity, I would say, for speakers, for those who work like you, run a blog. I do too, and so do other guys. It's a necessity, meaning you have to incorporate a certain amount of humor into your podcasts, your interviews, and so on. Because otherwise, it just doesn't stick. Only when information comes along with a certain emotion does it really stay with the person. That's why very often people say, oh God, why is all this happening to me? Why? Why is this happening to me? But if you just change your perspective a little and realize that events, time, place, and circumstances all come together for us, they don't just happen to us. They're arranged for us, specifically for our experience, and so that we can become stronger. A father who drinks, who beats his wife and children, he's making them stronger, right? And being angry at him your whole life is pointless. You're the one carrying this burden, all this filth in your heart towards him. He might not even care anymore. But you carry it inside yourself, right? And it gets in the way of your life. It holds you back from growing, and it really limits your potential. That's it. And when you realize that everything that happens or doesn't happen to you, but happens for you, for your benefit alone, that's when you start to forgive people. You start to take back responsibility for your own life. You start to understand that no one is to blame for anything, right? Everything turned out exactly as it was supposed to, in the most optimal way for your level of development at that time, so that you could become who you are today. And today, everything is happening in the most optimal way so that you can continue to grow. So by understanding these things in the course of my own development, I changed my life a lot, because of course there were resentments, right? Of course there were also times when I couldn't accept other people, right? So in general, if you look at astrology, numerology, disciplines like that, the sun has a strong influence on me. That is, I am a very independent person.
Were you born on the 1st?
No, I was born on the 31st. My birth chart.
Aha!
Yeah. So I was born on the 31st at 11:45 p.m., right on the border between the 31st and the 1st. I'm a very independent person. I don't tolerate pressure. So whenever I work for others, I'd leave, sometimes even with a scandal, or I would just leave because I can't accept any kind of pressure on myself. Understanding this, yes, there are people like me, there are people who dominate, and there are people who accept domination. I mean, these people are called different things in different places. Like there's the engine, and there are the carriages. So sometimes we're the carriages, sometimes we're the engines. Some people strive to become president, while others feel sorry for the president because they understand the insane amount of responsibility he has and would never want to be in his place. So again, everyone has their own path. That's why, as Christ said, judge not, lest you be judged. So based on my own perspective, I used to be very judgmental. There was also this difficulty with delegating if we're talking about business processes, because it's like, just go faster, I'll do it myself. But that's not the right way. A good manager, a good entrepreneur is someone who knows how to delegate processes and does it masterfully. That way, he frees up a huge amount of time for himself to scale up instead of drowning in operation. Exactly. And in this regard, I constantly had to step into the growth zone in order to understand the nature of another person, to have the patience for them to learn this, so that I could later delegate it to them, and so on and so on and so on. Just like that. That's why even now, look, I wear a ring, Solomon's ring, if you know it, which says, everything passes, and these too shall pass. Because there are three natures of the mind. Remember the three natures of the mind? They're also called modes in some places, and in others they're called the gunas of material nature. Simply put, to make it clear, it's the nature of the mind. And for everyone, this is divided into three categories: passion, ignorance, and goodness. That's why all people are different too. We look at them, some are very good natured and kind, and so on, positive. Some are ignorant, meaning they are completely closed off from knowledge. Ignorance, what does that mean? Not to know, right? That is, he's closed off from knowledge, and so he only learns through experience, through suffering, illness, divorce, and everything else. There is passion. That is, there are passionate people. And this whole world is built precisely on the nature of passion. Because there is a muse who inspires a man creates something. That is the flows of Tao energy. What is Tai Chi? Remember, black in white, white in black. This is male and female. And Tai Chi, together they form a great limit. Therefore, for a woman, the energy of inspiration is the grail. Yes, if it is symbolic. For a man, the energy of achievement is a phallic symbol. That's why in psychology, I even remember in my third year, they talked about the phrase, I can do it myself. For a woman, this is the most intense crisis of female thinking. When she shifts from the energy of inspiration to the energy of achievement, that's it, she turns into a man. Accordingly, she becomes less attractive to other men if she is single, and so on. So all of this is based on passion. Without passion, there would be no children. Without passion, masterpieces of architecture, painting, and so on would not be created. That's how it is. And that's why, of course, we should all strive for goodness to move further in that direction. And as we age, this happens, our hormones settle down, yes, and we become more virtuous, more reasonable people. All practices are aimed at this. Yoga and qigong are specifically focused on harmony, on concentration, on turning attention inward, and on raising energy. That's how it is. But nevertheless, if we're talking about business, about activity, it's all the energy of passion. And here, things can happen in all sorts of ways. And that's why when suddenly something doesn't go as I planned, and I start getting caught up in my mind, meaning the mind's chatter begins, I just look at the ring. Remember that everything passes, and this too shall pass, right? And then, phew, I ground myself in the moment. That's how it is. There were a lot of challenges, a lot of difficulties, many business processes, many started, many closed, and so on. There were also many travels to India, to China, to Siberia, here, to monasteries. So when I tell people about my life, some of them don't even believe that it's possible to do so much in one lifetime. They finished school, vocational school, went to work at a factory, got married, had children, and are still working at the factory. Well, I mean, it's to each their own. And that kind of life, I guess, is a matter of taste. But it's not to my taste. That is, you constantly need to learn new things, to search, to improve yourself, because it's an endless process. In other words, there is no upper limit to it. In Sanskrit, there's a term called Sanatana Dharma, which translates as eternal teaching. Or in Russian, as we say, live and learn. So it's about the same thing I was talking about. All of life is a school, and it will keep teaching you either until we finally learn, since it has all the time in the world, or until we leave this body and move on to the next. And then life will keep teaching us again and again, over and over. That's why there's a discipline called Nimitta Shastra, the science of signs. This is Vedic knowledge, where a person learns to track the signs what life and the world are telling them. And to use more Sanskrit terminology, it's called Digbala, energy of direction. Digbala, the energy of your path. Are you aligning yourself with it? Or are you going against this direction? If you simply go against this direction, then all the events that happen will unfold exactly as they are supposed to. And if you have aligned yourself with the energy of your direction, then you will like these events, you will be satisfied with how they happen. And you feel like, oh, I hit all the green lights, and so on. And in life, everything happens and comes together because you have aligned yourself. But if you go against the energy of your direction, those events will still happen. It's just that you're going against the flow, and that's exactly why you're not satisfied with them. Do you understand? So the way an ordinary person thinks, and the way it's more effective to think, is that nothing is happening against you. You either align yourself and know how to do it and are able to do it, or you go against the flow, and then a series of failures constantly happens in your life. Well, that's how it is. In general,
Sometimes I even deliberately ask the universe, so to speak, to give me certain signs. That is, when I'm faced with a choice or need to make a difficult decision. That's it. And yes, it's interesting, like Shastra,
Nimitta Shastra.
Nimitta Shastra.
Yes, Nimitta Shastra. I have a product called Manifestation. It's a project like that. I have two educational directions. One is related to finance, financial education, investments, and so on. And the second is connected precisely with everything that does not concern material life. Everything related to spiritual growth, yoga, qigong, various body-oriented practices, and so on. That's it. And right now we have a private channel on Telegram. And once every month or two, I send out a questionnaire. And there's a series of disciplines that people, the participants, vote on and choose themselves. For example, in February, March, or rather March, April, we had finances, financial education, financial literacy, personal financial planning, clearing the mind of fears related to money. Me and money, wealthy people, this work, both esoteric and accordingly more practical, like expense control, increasing the number of income sources, and so on. And for May, the guys chose Nimitta Shastra. Well, by majority vote, some didn't choose, some did, but the majority, 58%. And so we just started with Nimitta Shastrate, Science of Omens. That's right. So it's a very interesting discipline when you start to see, yes, you start to notice certain things. For example, since 2013, as you know, I've been consulting people. A woman comes in for a consultation and asks, should I have an abortion or not?
That's a serious question.
A serious question, yes. You could, get into a discussion, you could read the natal chart or do something else. There are different approaches, natal charts, some kind of numerological matrix, hands, lines, signs, papillary patterns, dermatoglyphics, and everything related to that. That's also an effective discipline. Physiognomy. My father is a specialist in physiognomy. He even recorded an entire course on physiognomy within our organization. It's a very interesting discipline, and you can also learn a lot about a person from it. But there are faster ways to do this too. That is, when you are synchronized with your own flow, when you are in the channel of course, this requires a certain tuning, a certain state, a prayerful state, or you could call it something else. When you at least do some practices to raise your energy upwards, right? Because life, children, business, activity, everything related to the material world, money, all of that is connected to our 3 lower energy centers. And our task is to go through this and raise the energy at least up to here, to the Anahata, the heart chakra, because this is where prema is located in Sanskrit, unconditional love. This is where that feeling is found, similar to when you are a small child who has just been born and starts to crawl. And here you feel the beginnings of it. You are just touching this prema. And when we manage to fix ourselves here, it becomes a stable state of that same feeling, only directed toward the whole world, all of life, the entire universe, and so on. When you are not angry at anyone, when you have forgiven everyone, when you deeply understand the causes and effects, where the real cause is and where the effect is in this world, that's it, yes. That's why our task is to raise the energy here, yes, according to certain treatises from yoga. Because the 3 lower energy centers are connected to the physical body. When the soul leaves the physical body, they dissolve along with this body. And only the 3 upper energy centers are connected to the eternal. Roughly speaking, when you reach this point, you are saved in the cloud. The new you is saved in the cloud, and your next life will begin from this safe point. If it doesn't work out, if a person lives only by some basic instincts, I was once working in Zaretsino and saw a girl about 20 years old wearing a t-shirt that said, drink, eat, fuck, repeat. You get it, right? Those are all the basic values a person has. If
She went right through the 3 chakras.
right through the 3 chakras. If a person lives that kind of life, then of course, in the end, they're probably not going to be satisfied unless they at least come into contact with these things. Because that's the ego. The lower part, that's the ego. What is the ego? It's for oneself. Egoism. But there's also altruism when the contrary. You give to other people. When you give, and that's the taste. Yes, that's the taste. I have a charitable foundation called Under One Sky. And within this foundation, there are different areas, different supported non-denominational initiatives. So, there's Sadhguru, a well-known speaker, a famous teacher, yoga master, and mystic. His name is Jaggi Vasudev, but everyone knows him as Sadhguru. He once said, where theologians arrive, faith departs. Those are his words, not mine, but I completely agree with them. So when a person starts talking about God, about the Holy Scriptures, the Pharisees, that whole story, then faith, the higher taste leaves that place. It's true, because religion and faith are different things, right? Dogma, certain rules, and your inner feeling, your practice, your connection with your higher self, with the higher self of your higher self, these are completely different things. If no one has ever experienced this, there is an Indian saint considered to be Srila Prabhupada.
Mm.
He's the founder of the ISKCON organization. That's, well, just to make it clear for the viewers, that's the Krishna consciousness movement, right, all over the world. And once he asked, some people had come to listen to a lecture, he asked, there was a businessman and so on, it was something serious in America. He asked him, how does your day go? He replied, well, business, food, activities, work, employees, construction, then back home, wife, kids. It's like that. Do you know how he answered him? It may have been blunt, but it was the truth. He asked, so how is your life any different from a pig's? Maybe that will offend someone now, but there are deep, non-material things we should strive for. That's the general conclusion of my message. No matter what we do here, no matter what image we try to create of ourselves, right? It's a very interesting moment when you start practicing. There's a certain type of Kriya Yoga, a very powerful form of yoga. At this point in my life, I've moved away from yoga, from qigong, from wushu. We practice yoga specifically. And I have a master in Kriya Yoga. He lives in India, in Vrindavan, on the Holy Land. And the practices of Kriya Yoga are very serious. They allow you to quickly burn away all the negative aspects of karma. Specifically, it's negative. Well, conditionally speaking, there is no negative or positive. That's just how we perceive it. What is hard for us? What is easy, right? That's why I believe that Kriya Yoga is one of the few tools today that truly helps a person very quickly raise their energy upward, rapidly change their consciousness, and swiftly burn away that negative part of their karma, which is what creates the illusion and the lack of understanding as to why things aren't working out here or there, or why my life is difficult and challenging. Teachers start to appear, information comes your way, and life begins to change very, very quickly. But only if I'm looking in that direction. If I'm not, if I ignore it, well then, and there's nothing wrong with that either. Again, everyone has their own path. There are young souls, yes. Why is it said, why are there so many people on earth today? Why are there so many people? Why are there so many people today? An enormous number. Because so many trees are being cut down and so much meat is being eaten. That's why, because according to Vedic knowledge, we go through several stages of soul development. The first is the mineral form of life. The second is the plant form of life, then the animal form of life, the human form of life, and the divine form of life. These are the 5 stages. And every living being, every soul goes through all these stages. That's why it said every crawling ant is a future saint. One way or another, it's inevitable. In time, with its own progress, it will become a saint.
Candidates for the human world.
Yes. That's why we are also going through a certain stage. So when we cut down trees, let's say, for the sake of argument, that the tree also has a solid, continues to progress and moves on to the animal level, right? We eat meat, a huge amount of meat nowadays. Today,
So by doing this, we're actually speeding up the evolution of animals.
we're speeding up the evolution of animals, that's all. And after being an animal, a soul receives a human body. But it receives a human body for the first time, so in essence, it's still an animal inside, right? And naturally, what we're talking about here, he might not even understand it. Or it will definitely be outside the scope of his interest. And nowadays, people are discussing basic things like how to reduce the population and so on, things like COVID, vaccines, conspiracy theories, and so on. It's all very simple. My teacher says, it's all very simple. Give people knowledge, give people a higher taste, give people practice, and that's it. And a huge number of people will start striving for holiness. They will automatically begin to feel a different taste, right? Meat. Someone eats meat, of course, that's their personal choice, but it's still an intoxicant. The heaviest foods are meat and lard. It takes about 7 to 9 hours to digest in the body. So there's no need to turn to any esotericism. You eat meat, and for 7 to 9 hours, it passes through your intestine. Put a piece of fruit and a piece of meat side by side, and leave them here for 7 to 9 hours. What will happen to each of them? The fruit will just stay as it is, while the meat will start to rot. The same thing happens inside us. That's all. So if you eat meat, at least try to minimize it, or at least have some detox days a couple of times a month, just eating fruits vegetables, liquid foods, and so on. Cleanse your intestines to reduce the amount of toxins in your body. And gradually, just look at all the people who are already retired. They eat little meat, actually, because a person physically feels that it's hard to digest. More buckwheat, more vegetables, more nuts, and so on. That's all there is to it. So this is also a factor that holds back our energy, our energetic potential. Because if we look at carnivores and vegetarians in nature, a tiger or a lion eats meat and then just lies around lazily, not wanting to do anything, right? But a horse eats a bucket of oats and works all day, so to speak, or a donkey or an elephant, for example. That's why gradually, if we keep developing, if we give people knowledge, give them certain understandings in other words, give them the pieces of the puzzle. People just don't have enough pieces of the puzzle. But then you add one, add another, add the third, and suddenly a new picture comes together for them in life. That's it. Naturally, we will stop or at least eat fewer animals, cut down fewer trees, and take better care of nature. And that's all. And gradually, the number of people on Earth will decrease. Well, that's my answer to today's globalists. Here, I completely support my teacher's point of view. I really believe that, yes, that's exactly how it is. And that's why today there are so many people on Earth. And again, people who simply aren't interested in this. They are just not at that stage of development yet. They're not interested.
They've only come from animal kingdom.
Yes. And they're just gaining a new kind of experience. They need meat. They need these passions. They need this ignorance. It's a natural stage in human development. And there's nothing good or bad about it. You understand? Good or bad, it's such a subjective thing. It's, look, there's a person whose point of view doesn't match mine. Based on that, I form an idea, an understanding of him as being bad. That's all there is to it. But these are just different pieces of information. So ultimately, there is no good or bad. There's only what is most beneficial for my own growth and development. That's all. If I didn't sense this in time, didn't notice it, didn't understand it, and didn't align myself with the energy of my own direction, then certain circumstances will arise that will lead me there, and I will most likely interpret them with my mind as difficult, or let's say bad or uncomfortable in some way. That's more or less how it happens.
While you were talking about all that, I had some thoughts to add to confirm what you were saying, right? Because I have experience too, and I tried not to interrupt you because it was interesting to listen and I didn't want to. Yeah. But I did manage to hold on to two thoughts. I want to share them. So first, when you were talking about how life backs you into a corner if you don't challenge yourself, and one of my teachers told me the same thing. If you push yourself with ascetic practices, go a little hungry, get less sleep, constantly overcome something, right? For example, going off to the mountains or the steppes and practicing survival skills there, right?
Yes.
Then, so to speak, in the heavenly office up above, they'll see that this guy is already putting himself through enough standing on nails, fasting a couple of times a month, and accordingly, those fateful trials. And so when things get tough simply because of circumstances, time, place, and conditions, as you say, come together in an unfavorable way, and a person starts to stress out and life starts pressing in on them, those things just won't happen because you are consciously creating these challenges for yourself in life. So even from this perspective, you can explain to your mind why you need to do this, why you need to practice asceticism. It's simply beneficial. You're actually making your own life easier. It's better to consciously spend an hour on the treadmill yourself, for example, just walking for an hour.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or say stand on nails for 10 minutes, scream a little and accept that pain rather than face harsher challenges later on. And second thing I wanted to say about the anahata, when you mentioned that the flow of energy needs to be raised to the anahata, in 2018 I spent 2 weeks in a retreat in Altai, and one of my practices there was the four immeasurable states of Brahma. Brahma is our creator of the universe. The universe is his manifested body, and he experiences four states: infinite love, infinite equanimity, infinite joy, and love, equanimity, joy. What's the fourth one again?
Well, is it knowledge, infinite knowledge, or bliss? If you mean Saturday Chitananda, that's eternal bliss. omniscience.
So, in general, 4 states, yes. For some reason, I just can't remember them all right now, but that's not important. I was tuning into these 4 states. And at some point, I went for a walk, sat down in a meadow, and I noticed that butterflies started flying over and landing on me. I even have a photo of it somewhere, just like that, one after another, after another. The butterflies landed on me. So in this state, yes, 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 I really felt that when you radiate love into the world starts to respond to you in kind.
Yes.
And accordingly, here you realize that when you get angry, when you're dissatisfied, grumbling, or whatever else. So by projecting this, you start to see, first of all, the reflection.
The reaction.
Yes. And
it's called ripples on the water, right?
yes. And you can get stuck in this cycle too. Well, that's basically what happens. That's why, yes, positive thinking is important, living from the heart. But of course, all this is easy to say, while in reality, it's serious work on yourself. It's about practices, it's about meditation, it's dozens of, well, to become a master, it's thousands and tens of thousands of hours. It's a very rewarding path, even if you look at it pragmatically.
Of course, it's the most rewarding path.
The most rewarding path.
There are certain systems and mechanisms for working on this. That is, you can meditate, you can choose not to meditate, you can forget about it, and so on. But there is a system, for example, Kriya Yoga, where you are given a specific exercise in a specific sequence. And by doing it, you are guaranteed to reach a certain state. Guaranteed, there simply are no other options. You will reach a state of balance between the external and the internal. Basically, that's all there is to it. Everything that happens outside is just a reflection. Our whole life, all the events that happen to us, are a reflection of our own consciousness. We're studying this now in the Nimitta Shastras. Even a fly doesn't just fly into a room for no reason. It's your consciousness that, for a certain reason, draws it in here. That's why all events are integrally connected to each other, and all of them are projected from you. That's why we, together with the guys, are learning how to step out of the mind's game, because in 99% of cases, it's just the mind's chatter. It's the mind's game, the mind talking, a conversation with itself, and the mind talks to itself, plays with itself, and so on. And in the ideal picture of the world, in the absolute sense, our fundamental task is to go beyond all this, to turn inward, to deeply immerse ourselves within, and to truly understand that all of this originates from me, and only I am truly capable of changing it all. People on the level of the mind often do things, they truly try to show something about themselves. Look, this is precisely who I am, guys. This is truly me. Please love me as I am. How else can I possibly make you like me? And so on and so forth. The practice says, stop. Stop trying to prove something to someone, to show off, to perform for others, because all of that is you. And when you reach this point of perception, through everything that used to be valuable to you before, anyone or anything you considered important, it all becomes unimportant. This perception is a little different, a different angle of perceiving yourself, the world, your identification in this world, and so on. Well, this is really, really deep. I think that only a very small number of people are actually interested in this. And in general, they even need to go down this path, yes. But as a guiding star, that is to say, as a central focus of one's attention, it is very much like what the revered Father Seraphim of Sarov once profoundly said if you were to read his hagiography, his sacred biography. He indeed said, if you only truly knew what immense bliss and what profound delight this is, you would most willingly bury your own earthly body in the ground with the crawling worms and readily give it to them to consume. Just if you only knew, well, that's how it's said, that's what's written. But it's true, really, it's true. And the same goes for Sadhguru. I have practiced 3 different Kriya Yogas, different types of Kriya Yoga, including with Yagi Vasudeva. He calls it Isha Kriya Yoga. There's Isha Kriya Yoga, there's Atma Kriya Yoga, different ones, but they're all essentially Kriya Yoga from Babaji, right? And he also says the exact same words, just a bit more socially adapted. He says, I'm constantly drunk. Every day I'm drunk every day, but I don't consume anything. In other words, a person's hormonal system is so balanced that it releases only the hormones of joy every day: dopamine, oxytocin, endorphin. And in this state of constant bliss, joy, and love, a person radiates outward. This is exactly what we are all striving for. We are all moving forward. And whether we want it or not, life will push us in this direction.
You said the key word, and I remembered what the fourth state is. It's joy.
Yes.
Well, you said bliss, but essentially it's the same thing.
Well, yes.
So love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. The four Brahma states.
Yes, you see. And the universe immediately shows you, right? Just like that. And butterflies appear on you. Isn't that wonderful? Master Shan, when we practiced, used to say, only a person who is energetically pure can stand and calmly look at the sun. This is a kind of criterion, an identifier for everyone who is watching or listening to us right now. Go outside when the sun is bright and see if you cannot, at sunrise, not at sunset, no, the midday sun. And when I was deep in practice, I could stand and look at it without sunglasses, without seeing spots, afterward, without any, just stand and look. Later, when I left my practices, there was a transitional period when business collapsed. I started launching other businesses, opening them. I had stalls at the Sabilovsky markets, selling tablets, phones, various things, food delivery to restaurants, marketplaces, all that stuff, the ones that existed at that time, so to speak. And my practice declined. And that's how I always identify myself. I look at the sun and already start squinting. So you can fool yourself with your mind as much as you want, but there are certain indicators by which you can track. Are you truly filled right now with G energy, prana, argon? It's called differently everywhere. Or are you just walking around fantasizing to yourself right now? Very often people deceive themselves. And that's it. And when the practice came back into my life, I see that's how I identify it. Well, of course, I don't look at the sun for 15 or 20 minutes, but I stand for a minute or two and I realize that's it. Boom. I return to an energetic balance. Yes, that is to a certain sense of fullness. After all, what can we share with other people if not our own fullness, if a person is empty? The third law of the universe in Vedic treatises, like attracts like and always gives rise to the same. So you shouldn't be surprised that the people around you are those who don't suit you, because like attracts like, the things that trigger us in other people are exactly what we need to work on within ourselves. This is important to understand. If you don't have something within you, you simply let it pass by without noticing. That's all. But if something triggers you, bothers you, angers you, or makes you nervous, then your task is to turn inward to find and recall the situations where you behave in the same way. Let those situations pass through you, analyze them, bring them up, and let them go. Christian treatises say, for any saint or monk, conflict is a great blessing. Why? Because in those moments,
all the triggers come to the surface.
yes, what you need to work on rises up. But the vast majority of people push it back down.
Yes.
Because they don't want to come into contact with that side of themselves. No one wants to know that they're bad. That's normal. It's human nature. No one wants to know they're bad, so they push it deeper inside. But what will be the result? Situations will keep repeating themselves with other people and different circumstances, just to pull it out of you anyway. So that you face it, let it go, and move on.
You know, it's interesting. I wanted to ask you something. You traveled 200,000 kilometers to meet your teacher.
Yes.
What kind of teacher are we talking about, and where can you walk so many kilometers on the ground? Or are these really other places actually?
For the sake of meeting with your teachers.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
Yes.
I have traveled a lot. I have already spoken about this. I have traveled a lot in different places. As part of our organization, we hold off-site events in China, in India, and specifically the last few locations have been in India. These are Vrindavan, Varanasi, and Mayapur holy places, I repeat. Varanasi, that is, it's a Shaivite place, yes, where three rivers converge, the Ganges, Yamuna, and Saraswati. Vrindavan is about Krishna, it's Vaishnavas there, Krishna devotees, and Mayapur as well. So we are in a non-denominational context. This year, in September, we are planning a trip to the Himalayas, meaning we are organizing it and currently gathering a group. My teacher from Vrindavan will also be coming, especially to the Himalayas, and there will be several yoga trainers as well. So we always have a packed program there, our constant practices, ongoing retreats, and so on. That's why I've traveled a lot, seen a lot, and encountered many different things. The experiences have been both positive and not entirely positive. But there's also a story. For a while, I studied exorcism. So I have a certain amount of experience in that area. But there are techniques and practices that are much stronger than exorcism, right? So during the process of development and study, I saw people twisting, speaking in voices that weren't their own, the kind of thing most people have probably only seen on television, right? And how the exorcist drives it out of them, right? Like when an entity jumps out and grabs another person, usually by the throat, and the other person sees this, starts coughing, their throat gets scratchy, and so on. So all these kinds of things are quite amusing. But there are practices, more serious practices, like Akasha meditation. For example, I have also studied it and still practice it to this day. That is, when you call upon your guardians, your guides through this, you can, with just a snap of your fingers, burn away any entity in a person, no matter what it is. Well, except for the serious ones. There are different levels of these entities, right? There are imps, larvae, pishachas, rakshasas, and so on. And then there are higher ranks, those are demons. If there's a demon in a person, well, it rarely happens, but still, in that case, it's hard to deal with. Very powerful entities, right? Exactly. But still,
Demons are basically like gods, just the dark side.
yes, just the dark side. Yes, they can possess several people at the same time. Control multiple people. Is a serious guy. But everything below that can be easily dissolved. You can give it a few seconds to live on its own, because otherwise you open a channel and that's it. It just burns up in the divine channel. It burns up. The technique of summoning your own guardians is also interesting. The master taught this. And then many times it always happens. When you enter a certain state, 5-7 minutes of meditation, you ask your mentors to come to you, your non-incarnate teachers, your own, who is supervising you, who is arranging the time, place, and circumstances for you. There are several of them. You might have 3, 5, or even 8 of them in your practice. Do you see all of this? You come into contact with them, you communicate.
In what form do they appear?
Different forms. They can all appear in different forms.
Okay, so how did you see them? If you can share.
Mostly they are tall, bright, white people with white hair. Well, at least that's how it happens for me. And one is small, round, but really very fat. Some people see wolves during their practice. There is a certain race, also similar, that looks like wolves. Some see lizards, some see cobras, right? And so on. Well, everyone has their own contracts, among other things. There can be a situation where, as people say, someone sells their soul, but you can accidentally or intentionally make a contract with certain layers of entities, and they will give you everything here: power, fame, recognition, money. But then for several incarnations, you work for them. You either do this consciously or unconsciously. Such contracts are also terminated in practice. But that's not the point. What you do is invite or ask your guides to come to you wherever you are. And the master said something interesting about this. And then I immediately felt it, right from the very first time. It feels like a shift in your field. You know, it's like you just sitting there, your aura is around you. And in the moment you feel as if it shifted to the side and then came back. It's as if, you know, you get goosebumps all over your body and then everything just returns back. And the sensation is a sign that you've asked. And they appeared here instantly. Well, of course, it's in response to your request. You shouldn't mess around with this without making a request. That's why all of this is very interesting. In my opinion, these practices, specifically the high frequency ones, let's call them that, high frequency practices. I had a story, remember, at the academy on Baraban, right? At our place on Elektrozavodskaya, I'm sitting in my office. It's 2 in the afternoon, and I just start to black out. I mean, I'm honestly just starting to black out. I realize that I'm about to collapse, just fall down and fall asleep on the floor. I can't move anymore. And I have a couch, and Master Kontaya taught me acupuncture, reflexology. I put needles in people who need to relax certain areas where there are tight spots. We just relax everything with the needle. The energy flow starts. Well, I've also practiced healing since childhood. I can lay my hands on someone. For example, my partner at Toledo, you remember him? He often tears his ligaments. I lay my hands on him, hold him there for a while, say a prayer, and that's it. The next day, his ligaments are healed and so on. But I want to make it clear, I don't practice this. I really don't. I mean, I have the realization, I have the experience. I don't practice it because there was a time when I did it, often, very often. And I have trouble with cleansing myself, meaning getting rid of it, because one way or another, you end up taking something from the person onto yourself. Afterwards, I might get sick myself, be bedridden for several days, so I just stop doing it. When the time comes, if it does, I'll study cleansing protocol practices, and then I'll continue doing it. So there's a comfortable, inviting couch in my private office, and when I need to truly unwind, I simply lie down on its soft cushions, and that's it. I completely switch off from everything. At that precise moment, two distinct ethereal entities suddenly fly in through the open window and gracefully stand directly in front of me, appearing just like ordinary people. One of these mysterious figures is clearly dressed in a pristine, bright white coat, while the other is wearing some kind of soft, light beige coat. He stands over my head and says, "Listen, let me get into your neck. I need to enter your neck and pull something out, like an implant." And I hadn't mentioned it, but my neck had been hurting for a week. Right here, my neck was hurting. I was like, well, I know I have a Gleason's loop at home. If I stretch out, try all sorts of things, warm up, but nothing helps. I do Surya Namaskar, the Eye of Revelation. I stretch, but it doesn't go away. And then the situation happens. I rush in. He comes up to me quickly and lets me in. And I'm in this alpha state, right at the transition from wakefulness to sleep, drifting off. I say, no. And he says, don't worry, everything will be fine. Don't worry. I say, okay, let's do it. And he went right through the couch like this, climbed down with his hands, did something there, pulled something out, and they immediately, as if they had to do it really quickly, and disappeared. I woke up. I even have some really big and significant moments like that, you know.
I wonder who actually gave you that particular plan.
Me too. A master, one of my teachers, once told me, he explained the difference between high frequency entities and technocratic ones. The higher ones will never make contact with you without your permission. They will always ask you first, so that you never feel scared or frightened in any way. Technocrats, they just go ahead. In the United States of America, at the state level, the government actually gives an annual quota for human experimentation. There is a specific quota in exchange for technology. They provide technology. There is a civilization called Draco, known as Draco. There is a Vedic treatise called the Vimana Shastra. It is kept in the Central Museum in Delhi. You can read this treatise. There are different shastras. Today I mentioned the Nimitta Shastra. There is the Mukha Samudrika Shastra. There are various shastras. These are sciences, disciplines about different areas of focus. There is the Vimana Shastra, which is the science of flying machines. And there, in detail, it describes what races exist, what kinds of flying machines they have, cigar-shaped, bird-shaped, and how, for us, this is a high-frequency civilization. Everything that is saucer-shaped belongs to low-frequency technocratic civilization. They're called Koli. It is written there that they are called Koli. These are the greys with big eyes and long fingers. And they abduct people, conduct experiments. They don't ask anyone. They don't care about karma or things like that. It's all about the technology. There is simply verified information that our government has connections and contacts. And they have connections and contacts as well. It's just that these are different civilizations and they have different interests here, among other things.
By the way, there is a film like that, but I just can't remember what it's called right now. Maybe you saw that aliens were abducting people in Alaska.
Yes.
And there was a psychologist who, through regression, yes, she would bring these people back on the regression. Yes, and they would remember and start levitating on the bed. There are actual live documentary recordings of this.
These are all real events now. There are a huge number of people who have awakened like this and who don't know each other. In the process, they've already connected with each other, and there are tons of these stories on YouTube, all about the same thing. They talk about the same things without knowing each other. Then they get in touch and piece together a certain puzzle where they were, what they did, and so on. That's interesting information too. But it's all a game of the mind, you know? Politics, people watch politics. That's all a game of the mind too, right? People watch, things about sexual minorities, for example. That's also a game of the mind, coming from certain limitations, from fears. But our fundamental task, as the revered Shiva profoundly stated in the ancient scriptures, O Mahadev, if you ever look anywhere else but deeply within your own true self, then you are most certainly looking in the entirely wrong direction. That is, all this huge amount such a quantity of distractions in the outside world, such a quantity of everything that distracts, especially men, especially our age. These are women, this is family, these are children, this is activity. In both cases, I want to go there, do something there, have some hobbies, friends. But if we remember the wheel of balance, the 8 main spheres of life and personal growth, some call it personal growth, some call it spiritual development. This also needs to be given time. And this is just you with yourself, all the interaction of you with yourself. The longer you devote time to this, the more effectively it happens, the less interested you become in everything else. All that external stuff out there, yes, it really exists, it does, it's out there. And politics exists, and behind the scenes games, and wars, all of that exists. But your world, there's a very good saying, thinking about crisis leads your own affairs to decline. That's why the more a person watches television today and feels themselves with all this war crisis here, something else there, and so on, the more they actually worsen their own affairs, their affairs will fall into decline. And crisis, what is a crisis? It's something new. It's the bringing of something new. Remember, in Chinese, crisis also means new opportunities. So if you're always looking for new opportunities everywhere, they will come to you. If you just fill yourself with negativity, your vibrations will drop. That is,
You'll just poison yourself.
yes, yes.
What you feed your mind.
Yes, exactly. Inside each of us, there are two always, a black one and a white one. Which one wins? The one you feed, that's all there is to it. If you feed the black one, it will win. It's also about vibrational frequency, remember. Each chakra has its own vibration. Here, it's 528 hertz, right? The Anahata chakra. So all entities, including all viruses, have low frequency vibrations. And that's why when a person falls into fear, judgment, resentment, aggression, or anxiety, they immediately draw closer to them. Right away, viruses, bacteria, parasites, entities, all of them, and the person stays right here. But even on the most basic level, I tell people every morning start with 3 things you're grateful for. Just wake up every morning and simply say what you're grateful for, or if you have some kind of conflict. Well, maybe some fear has come up. Bring yourself back with gratitude. Love and gratitude are the highest frequency. Bring yourself back to the present moment with gratitude. Like right now, I'm grateful to him for bringing up this conflict, this trait in me, something like that. I'm grateful that I was able to restrain myself. With this, in the moment, the energy immediately returns and rises up. Every morning, just 3 things you're grateful for. Your life will already start to change.
Since 2013, you've done over 4,000 consultations. I calculated it right away on a calculator. If you do 1 consultation every day, it would take 11 years to.
Yes.
So you really had a period when you were working intensely, right? Doing several consultations a day.
Very intensely, yes. You can scroll back on my Vcontacte page all the way to 2013 and then keep scrolling for several more years. There are thousands of reviews there, both on Instagram and Vcontacte. Later, I stopped asking people for them. People started writing them on their own as they gained experience and practice.
Were you doing consultations before 2013?
No, since 2013, from 2013 onward, yes, and beyond. Since 2013, and even before that, I was very deeply involved in this, really immersed myself in it. It was one of my areas of activity. And now, yes, EdTech Educational Technology has been one of my areas of activity since 2013. We've been in the market for a long time. We've worked with everyone you can imagine, with Business Molodost, with Ayaz, and with, well, Zoli. Even New York agencies helped us develop, yes, though I don't remember their names anymore. That's how it is. And back in 2013, renowned speakers like Satyadesh, who is well known today, and Alexander Shakov, a top expert in relationships, gave lectures at our venues on Barabanovaya, where you've been more than once, right? They delivered their talks to our audience and so on. That's how it is. Today, they are top figures in the relationship market. Yes, in the field of male-female relationships. That's why we have a strong background, a lot of experience. We have an educational license, and all our programs are certified. In our major year-long programs, people receive diplomas of professional education, which are entered into the FIS RVO, the official registry, and so on. That's how it is. And for a while, I devoted a lot of time to this because the operational processes were on me. I coordinated, assembled the team, and so on. And I used to do a lot of consulting, and I did it intensively. Every day, 3, 4, 5 people, every day, except weekend. At the moment, due to my workload in other areas, I have one consulting day a week, Friday. One day a week. And even then, at most, I set aside 12, 14, 16 hours, 3 consultations. And right now, appointments are scheduled a month and a half in advance. My assistant handles the booking. So today, consulting is no longer my top priority. Why? Because at a certain point, I realized that working one-on-one, you just can't reach as many people as you'd like to, right? Exactly.
But when you do work very closely one-on-one, the overall quality is significantly better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why today in the manifestation project, the private channel, before coming here this morning, I held a webinar. Every Saturday, we hold a meeting in the private channel where anyone can come and ask their questions. And I do a group analysis. A group analysis, which I go over in front of everyone so others can listen. You get what I mean, right? Whoever I'm analyzing, 50 or 60 people sit there listening, right? And people watch the recording afterwards. I see that this is more effective.
We will definitely share links to Ruslan's fascinating and innovative projects. You have a Telegram channel there.
Yes, I have a Telegram channel.
We'll definitely put it under the video.
This isn't a project about monetization, just to be clear. Yes, it costs like 1,900 rubles a month for a subscription. 1,500. We just raised it a bit to
cover costs, right?
Yes, operational expenses. Yes, that's all. And during all this time, I've written a series of educational programs. A lot. Programs about relationships, programs about Tantra. I'm a Tantra master. I've studied Tantra yoga extensively. Manipulators, a course on manipulation in relationships, a course on financial literacy, on investments, 2 courses on cryptocurrency, courses on physiognomy, numerology, and astrology. And we used to sell all these courses for 50, even 100,000 per course.
I took a course on Vedic numerology.
Yes. And today, I've uploaded all these courses to this Telegram channel for just 1,900 a month. And that's it. So go ahead. Do you want to grow? Grow. Here you go. Take eaters. A huge amount of content for you. Useful, necessary content. Grow. Plus, every Saturday we meet up there, and there's also a chat where people communicate and so on and so forth. Also, I post some podcasts there too. I'll definitely upload our podcast together. This isn't about monetization. So just last year, I clearly told the entire team, guys, look, we've got finance, crypto, investments, and so on. All of that is truly great. All of that is genuinely money-making, right? It's all truly wonderful. We're consistently making money. We're actively investing, and we're talking with all of you about it, moving forward together in some key areas. I said, let me do something for the soul. Make a little newsletter. I'll write it. Just send it out to the mailing list. And that's how this product was born. That's it. And I like it. I come here, and I know I have a place to unwind. Yes, let this be a hobby. It doesn't matter how, but I can share with people what I've accumulated over 20 years to give them this value, to share some practical experience. Some people don't achieve anything simply because they don't do anything. But those who do take action since we launched last November, those who actually do it are already seeing results like 5x or 7x improvements, both in terms of resources and everything else, compared to what it used to be. I believe you have to keep moving forward and share your knowledge with people, right? Now it's trendy, this edtech thing, right? And info, what's it called? Info gypsies, right? Info gypsies. That's why it's hard to separate this whole story. That's exactly why we licensed all our programs with the Ministry of Justice. Yes, we obtained an educational license so that people could tell where the info gypsy stuff is and where it's us. My teaching staff all have higher education. There are psychology masters, graduates, and so on. Well, in certain fields, yes, in nutrition science, they're strong. Slava Panchenko, remember him? He graduated from the London School of Nutritionists, right? The London Medical School for Advanced Nutrition Science. He also teaches programs with us. But nevertheless, I recently flew to Ufa. Remember, you were at the forum in Gelendzhik? At that time, I flew to Ufa and met with, there's a crypto blogger named Azat Valev. We discussed some points of intersection with him as well.
That name sounds really familiar. I actually just subscribed to him recently. Maybe you sent me his profile?
Well, maybe, yeah. He's a pretty well-known crypto blogger in the Urals. He has 500,000 subscribers on Telegram. A strong guy. Yeah, a good one too. It promotes the right values, so to speak.
I want to talk about Tantra. It's a really interesting topic, and I think everyone watching our podcast is going to get excited. Well, because everyone associates Tantra with sex, with the relationship between a man and a woman. I know that in Sanskrit, Tan means method, and Traya means liberation. In other words, it's a method that leads to liberation. Well, that's if you look at the essence of it. What does Tantra mean to you? And, well, you say Tantra master.
I'll explain. Let me immediately refer to my Tantra teacher. I believe he's an incredibly powerful master, both in Jyotish and in Tantra. His name is Shiva Vakya Siddha Baba.
You took the words right out of my mouth.
Shiva Vakya Siddha Baba. You can find his website online, Shiva Guru. I believe he is an incredibly powerful master, yes, in Tantra Yoga and in general in Jnana, which is knowledge. Jnana means knowledge in Sanskrit. He is an incredibly powerful master of Jnana. He passed on these teachings, and I received his blessing and guidance to further transmit this knowledge. Tantra, of course, is first and foremost the art of intimacy between a man and a woman. As the Taoists say, Tai Chi, the great ultimate, it only arises from the union of yin and yang energies. That is, from the energy of yang and yang, though. You understand what I mean now? Or yin and yin, yes, the energies, these are non-traditional sexual minorities. They conceptually do not understand the cause and effect relationship. No energy is generated there. It's not generated, you see, right? Only the union of man and woman forms Tai Chi, the great ultimate. That's why there are certain asanas in which it is favorable to practice Maithuna, which means intimacy in Sanskrit. This is not sex. These are different things. Maithuna begins where sex ends. Certain asanas, for example, when you touch each other with your Ajna chakras, right? She sits on you, right? And you intentionally start circulating the energy. Yes, in one direction, then in the reverse direction. In other words, by doing this, we raise.
She's sitting at that particular moment completely still and without any physical penetration, so to speak, just observing and being present in the space. With penetration. But there's no physical activity, right? Here it's specifically about internal activity along the orbit of energy circulation.
This is just one of the practices. There are many more. This is the deepest kind of knowledge. And of course, practice is needed here. Practicing to strengthen the pelvic floor muscles is essential, especially for women after the second or third child. Women often experience various types of prolapse. So it's important to strengthen the pelvic floor muscles, the diaphragm muscles, and so on. It's the same for men, they're no exception. You need to
pump up the muscle now.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes someone writes to me, can you please tell me how to pump the goose? That's what it's called, right? Pump the goose. There are certain asanas for doing this, including for strengthening the muscles. And for men, this is very important for men. For women, it's less important. Although all the energy, the whole shaft in a woman is generated. If you satisfy your woman, you receive a huge amount of energy, potential a tremendous amount. In Tantra, it is said, if your woman is satisfied, your entire universe will be satisfied and will support what you desire. All your wishes will come true if your woman is satisfied, if you can satisfy her in bed and not just yourself. Yes, like
here, probably you need to look at it on a broader scale, not just in bed, but in general, overall.
Of course.
In life.
Absolutely. Because for a woman, well, for a man, sex, rough sex, he needs rough sex, yes. A woman doesn't need rough sex as much. Yes, she needs it, but for her, the home she lives in, the apartment, the kids, communicating with you, all of that is this subtle kind of sex for her, let's call it that. And she needs this subtle sex for you to organize the household, for everything to be good between you, for her to feel safe with you, for you to listen to her. You understand? So why do men get into arguments with their women? Because inside her, all these unspoken things build up, and then she lets it all out at once with arguments, broken dishes, and so on. If you constantly listen to your woman, constantly take this tension away from her, and don't let it build up inside her, then it's a guarantee that there will be no arguments, no fights. She'll be satisfied, and your rough sex will be much more interesting for you. So yes, for a woman, you definitely need to create an environment where she feels protected and comfortable, and then she'll flutter around like a butterfly, take care of the household, and make you happy. That's how it works. It's a culture of relationships. But if we look at energy practices, there's right-hand Tantra and there's left-hand Tantra, which is already the magical side, right? That is, energy generation exists in left-hand Tantra through certain practices. But that's already, it's not for everyone. So for example, when you set a specific goal for your spouse, energy is generated toward that goal using certain visualizations with the help of Maithuna, with intimacy, creating an excess potential. And instead of dissipating into the space, as it does for most people, it is directed precisely toward a specific goal. But these are already such magical tantric things, not for everyone. At the basic level, of course, it's about strengthening your physiology, improving intimacy, because the generation of energy begins after the 20th, say the 19th or 20th minute of intimacy. Most modern men don't reach that level. They simply don't make it. And he might be muscular, look great on the outside, but he has a weak goose.
How do you strengthen the gooses? Let's talk about it.
I have recordings of the practice. I can send them if you're interested. Which asanas?
Is that included in the 1,900 rubles, or is that a separate thing?
Well, I can just send it to you. For people, yes, it's all included, right? So
It's just that I have experience in this too. I actually wanted to talk to you about the $1,000,000 point. You know about it, right? Do you use it?
not always, not all.
Not always. Because do you truly know how to effectively hold back ejaculation in another way, perhaps through different techniques or methods? Or
Yes. Look, there's a difference here between Taoist practices. There's a book called The Tao of Love. You can read it at the basic level. It's called The Tao of Love.
is that the book by Medvedev?
No, the book was written by Jamju. There are a lot of good things in it, a lot of good things, but there's still room to grow. Tantra Yoga reveals this in more detail. There is such a thing as ohas.
Yes.
Ohas is the psychic power of a man, psychic strength, and the ability to achieve a goal is called ohas. If you don't know, read about ohas and tejas. What does it mean? Be sure to read about it. This is all very interesting for personal development, for example. And a man's psychic power, ohas, is contained in his semen, in a man's semen. In Tantra, it is said that to create one drop of blood, 80 mouthfuls of food are needed. That is, 80 spoonfuls of food are required to create one drop of blood. To create one drop of semen, 80 drops of blood are needed. To create one drop of ohas, 80 drops of semen are needed. In other words, this is the most valuable thing in the world. This is male semen, no matter how anyone feels about it. According to tantric knowledge, the most valuable thing in the world is male semen. And a man, if you pay attention, who has sex too often and constantly releases his semen, well, he turns into a little monkey. He becomes lazy, too lazy to achieve anything, to do something, and so on. He gets dumber. With age, you may notice that it becomes harder to concentrate on something. If you were active in intimacy, you released your semen several times, and so on. Tantra teaches how to control ejaculation. Taoist traditions only teach how to retain, how to hold back, right? Guda in Sanskrit means sphincter. The anal opening is called guda. How do you retain semen? But if the semen starts to come out on its own and doesn't exit the body, it will go into the bladder. And that, over time, is a guaranteed way to get better cancer. That's why there are certain...
Why is it guaranteed?
Because there will be a constant inflammatory process. The semen will keep accumulating there in a place where it shouldn't.
And what about the $1,000,000 point? How does that work?
Well, it's the same thing. In fact, you're presenting this from the Taoist tradition, right?
Yeah. So basically,
you hold back.
The semen stays in the reproductive tract.
Yes, it stagnates there, and that leads to inflammation. But there is the urethral diaphragm. You know about that, right? The urethral diaphragm is what we contract. When men urinate after urination, they contract the urethral diaphragm, and that's how they hold it back. By working on this urethral diaphragm, by training it, we gradually untangle these two aspects that are conditionally connected to each other. In most men, the urethral diaphragm is atrophied, and quite significantly so. And that's why the processes of ejaculation and orgasm are connected, but they can be separated. Is that clear? And you'll experience the same orgasmic sensation, but you won't release semen. First of all, thanks to strengthened pelvic floor muscles. Secondly, thanks to a strong urethral diaphragm and control over the pubococcygeus muscles. So look, a man truly has a sort of production apparatus, you see.
Let's call it the lingam?
No, that's the apparatus itself, the lingam. And then there are the testicles, right? And they're outside the body. In women, the ovaries are inside the body. In men, they're outside. Why is that? Because the temperature there is always lower than body temperature, right? And there's this expression, the expression, it went to his head, like something hit the man. But in reality, nothing actually goes to the head because semen isn't stored in the testicle. So when they're outside the body, the temperature is lower and the apparatus isn't activated. The apparatus is only activated when a man has an erection. The lingam rises, it pulls the scrotum toward the body with ligaments, and heating begins. That's it. The apparatus is activated, semen production begins, the process of making semen starts.
So it turns out it's formed during the process?
During the process, exactly. During intimacy, semen is generated, semen is created. And you can notice that if your intimacy lasted 2 minutes, and if your intimacy lasted 20 minutes, the amount of semen you release from your apparatus will be much greater. So there will be a difference in volume, yes. Well, how can you know that I'm telling the truth right now? Maybe I'm lying, right? As Dr. House used to say, everybody lies, everybody lies. And that's why when we work, when we do certain asanas, certain techniques, we start to relax those ligaments that pull the scrotum up to the body, yes, so it stays outside, and heating does not occur. That is, semen is not produced, right? And thanks to control over the urethral diaphragm, even if semen is produced, we can either hold it in a certain way or release it outside. So we absolutely control this. We completely control it. There are even certain profound things. In fact, within the Tao of Love, if you meticulously read it, you will undoubtedly find extensive treatises there about ancient Taoist monks, revered masters, and powerful Tantra masters, detailing their practices and philosophies. And one master, a Tantra master, would go from house to house, was invited into homes, and he would heal women, for example, through Maithuna, through intimacy, or perform other miracles, working wonders with the help of Tantra. From the perspective of a modern person, this might indeed seem rather prejudiced or even quite superstitious, but that is precisely how the story genuinely goes. The other esteemed masters gathered together and started telling him, "Why are you continually going around having sexual relations with everyone? This truly cannot go on any longer. You possess a significant status. You are a revered lama or a respected jesh." And he immediately replied, "Me having sexual relations? Absolutely not." And then he performed the following act. He took out his lingam and started urinating, yes. So the stream of urine went out like this and then went back inside. And he said, "When you learn to do this, then we can talk." You get it, right? So the urethral diaphragm in men plays a very important role. Nowadays, modern physicists are already conducting experiments, applying a certain vibration frequency to water, and the water flows. There are already a lot of such videos on the internet. The water flows, then they turn on a different vibration, and it starts flowing like this, right? And when they turn on a third vibration, it starts to flow back. So there is a lot of knowledge, skills, and abilities involved here, including for women. For our girls who join the course, we send them special balls made of medical grade steel, which is completely hypoallergenic. In the past, Tantra used jade eggs that women would use to strengthen themselves.
But nowadays there aren't really any problems with them, right?
Yes, but sometimes the material is of poor quality. Poor quality material can lead to irritation or yeast infections.
And those eggs are expensive too.
Yes, exactly. That's why we have sets of different sizes, from light to heavy. And so a woman practices, and that's it. This way, sensitivity is restored after having children. For example, the woman might lose sensitivity, intimacy might not feel as vivid, and so on. All of that can be restored. and the quality improves. Intimacy between a man and a woman can be restored within 2, 3, or 4 months. He is able to strengthen, and she is able to strengthen as well, and that's it. And when the intensity is different, when the quality of intimacy changes, you can remember how it was when we first start dating new partners. When we start living with them back then, sexual relationships are vivid and everything feels great. It's exactly the same in the family. If we manage to bring back that intensity of emotion and excitement into family relationships, it changes those relationships on every level. But maybe we've gone a little off track here. After all, this is quite a delicate, intimate topic. For many people, it's like a temple closed off. And some people say it's dirty or something like that. Well, excuse me, if we all came from this so-called dirt, how can it be dirty? It can't. In fact, it's the most vivid thing there is. That is, through this, we are able to raise our energy upwards and progress very quick. But if we are family people, because there are people who lead a different lifestyle, like brahmacharis, monks, and so on, for them, it's precisely the practice of Kriya Yoga, where you can also raise your energy on your own. In family life, the path is such that you can do it together if both partners are moving forward and both understand the importance of this. Then it's a certain, very interesting path and experience. There are also, if we go further, various practices, energetic practices like massage. I also teach massage practices in my course where there is no penetration, not even touching. When you understand how the energy flows, you unlock certain points. For example, in women, these energy entry points are located here and at the back at the Achilles heel. You need activate the energy and then start circulating this energy in a certain way, guiding it up the legs, down along a specific trajectory. And that's it. And we concentrate it in one spot. As a result, the woman experiences a very intense orgasm. She trembles and so on, even without touching her body. This can be learned, but today, while this is necessary, it won't be possible to do this online. It's only gather, yes, for now, gather together men, women in pairs, break up, practice. That is why, let's say, there is a Master Osho. Yes, he was once
Yes.
Master of Tantra here. But how do people usually perceive this? Imagine we gather a group of 100 people, 50 men, 50 women, and start doing different practices. Women start having orgasms. Yes, you see, it happens very quickly. You learn very fast. You don't need to study this for a long time like teleportation, although you can learn teleportation in 6 sessions, yes. What will people think? What will the whole administrators think, right? Or others who might watch this somewhere, somehow? They'll think there are orgies going on there. That's why I repeat, this is not for everyone. Women very often pick up on this quickly. Yes, they say, yes, I want this, I want Tantra, yes. Then she comes to her husband. And what does he do? What's the male reaction? He gets offended. So what, is there something wrong with me? What's your problem? That's it. Well, buddy, just because you have 2 hands doesn't mean you're a rowing champion, right? So there's always room to grow here. There's always room for improvement. If your woman says, I want to go there, it means she's not fully satisfied somewhere. It means you're falling a little short in some area, right? That's why this is always an area for growth. For a certain kind of development, there are energy practices, but all of this leads to one thing, the need for growth, development, increasing your energy capacity, and understanding these things. Dantian, the chakra system, how everything works, how energy flows, where to direct it, for what purpose you're doing all this, or for what purposes. Because achieving material goals is just a consequence when you practice, when you expand your energetic potential. Yes, material goals follow as a result. All of life is a reflection of our consciousness, of our energy capacity. That's all there is to it. So when a man practices Maituna with his woman once and doesn't release his seed, a second time and doesn't release his seed, a third time and still doesn't release his seed, his energy level increases so much that real miracles start happening in his life. And the point I mentioned at the beginning about looking at the sun, that's an indicator. Try not to release your seed with your woman once or twice. Before that, look at the sun, and after, you'll immediately notice the difference. You'll notice the difference right away. You'll see that you can look at the midday sun longer and more calmly, not like before, but calmly. That's already an indicator that, yes, your energy level has increased.
So by not releasing your vital seed, you don't necessarily mean not having an orgasm, right? So it's perfectly okay to have an orgasm.
I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that. You need to work towards that, to learn how. But even if it happens, when you're being intimate with your beloved, your wife, and you don't have an orgasm, but you have to leave, let's say, for some reason. So you didn't release your seed. You can already notice it. You can look at the sun and track it. That is, you have more energy now. The second time, even more. In Tantra, there's a certain gradation, up to 12 times. So after one time, your blood composition changes. After 2 times, you start to feel more of a certain external energy. You start sleeping less, you recover faster, and so on. After 3 times, you already need to eat less. And then by the 11th or 12th time, by the 6th time, your skin improves. And by the 12th time, you actually experience changes in consciousness.
I can confirm that. Let this even be said on camera. Yes. I think it was in 2010 or 2011. So about 15 years ago that I read Mantak Cha's books. The book is called Cultivating Male Sexual Energy. I think that's the title. I watched his lectures, and that's where I learned about this $1 million point. Yeah. By the way, right next to it, there's also the $1 point. That's when you press it incorrectly. Yeah. And in fact, since then, I've started practicing this technique. And I immediately noticed that I experience orgasm, and it's actually much more intense than it would be with ejaculation, right? And you really do have a lot of energy left over.
Yeah.
It still gets used up though, but the energy is spent in a subtle way. That is, you're not actually expending seminal fluid.
You are expending it, yes, but it gets replenished very quickly.
It gets reabsorbed, it goes back through the bladder, just like you said. Yeah. But then I also learned from another teacher that it is not safe to do this all the time because, well, you just mentioned cancer. I haven't heard about cancer, to be honest. Yes, but what if?
If you practice this constantly, it will lead to exactly this.
Yes.
That is, this is not my experience. I have never personally met individuals afflicted with this particular and specific disease. But my revered master Shiva, when he was diligently teaching, he did indeed encounter people with such a challenging medical outcome.
And after what period of time?
About 15 years.
Well, so far everything is fine with me.
That's good that everything is fine. But there are more effective techniques. Like, remember, today I mentioned exorcism and techniques.
Well, as for building up those muscles, I don't know what they're properly called, but I also train those muscles. I understand what you mean, that you can hold it only with them. It's more difficult.
It's much more difficult.
Especially if you bring yourself to the very point of no return, holding it like that for an extended period is really quite hard.
Yeah.
Right. But nevertheless, it's possible, yes. And basically, you just need to keep training, keep going.
Practice 3 to 4 months. As experience shows, you need 3 to 4 months of practice. And in 3 to 4 months, you'll already start noticing this moment. But again, during these 3 to 4 months, you need to restrain yourself. You need to avoid wasting your seed. And not everyone needs this. Not everyone. This is for people who are practicing. Ordinary men, they usually drop out quickly. Well, most of the time, I've conducted a lot of trainings and seminars on this topic, both offsite and here in Moscow, both in person and online. And there's also a recorded course available in the Telegram channel. And not all men make it to the end. Women in this regard are stronger, so to speak, stronger. They really work on themselves. They really need it. Yes, they really restore themselves. And you can clearly see that there are results. For men, it's less common, much less common. I'm not saying it doesn't happen.
I suggest we wrap up our podcast here. We've shared a lot of diverse information. I think we'll meet again sometime and record another one.
Definitely.
Perhaps we will certainly get some feedback from our audience. What exactly interested you most in today's topic? Or maybe you found everything interesting. Please feel free to write in the comments section below, and perhaps we will carefully select a compelling topic and then discuss it in much greater detail in a future video.
Yes. What would I like to say from myself, friends? Keep growing, keep developing, keep moving forward, follow your interests. What is it that you would like? Remember what you dreamed about as a child. Listen carefully to those around you. Who says what you do best or what you would be best at, right? Things like that. Make a list of your wishes, some non-material ones. Notice what you do and where your time just disappears. Boom. And 3 hours have passed, just flown by, as if they never even existed. Or what you would do even if you weren't paid for it. Move in that direction, develop yourself in that area. Let it become a constant, integral part of your life. This is one of the keys to a harmonious, happy life. Well, here it's probably not so much about a harmonious and balanced life, but rather about a truly happy life. That is satisfaction. When you get pleasure, satisfaction, joy, then accordingly you understand why you live, right? And all the other troubles are already fading into the background. If you just let your thoughts go through this, put in a little effort, your life is guaranteed to change. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.